Okay, what is up, Fortnite crew? My chat has just asked me. You can say hi, chat. Say hi to everybody. Which Pokemon that I think should not return to Regulation MC? For my money, I'm gonna throw it out there. I know that a lot of Mega Pokemon are returning. However, there are certain Pokemon that I think of them shouldn't quite return yet. And I'll be honest, like I don't even think that like if all the Mega Pokemon are returning, I'm gonna leave like all the Mega Pokemon off this list. I am going to strictly include Pokemon that have a chance to not be reintroduced, because as of right now, if you ask me, Mega Salamence is a shoe-in. All of the Megas, right, that are not included right now, like Mega Tatsugiri, Mega Absol Z, Mega Lucario, those guys are on the way. They are 100% on the way. But there are certain Pokemon that might show up with them, as the third format of the game tends to be when we start to get legendaries introduced in the game, like with you know, the Paradox and like the ruinous legendaries from Generation 9. So, if it were up to me, which ones do we exclude? And that's easy. First off, it's going to be both the Urshifus. Both the Urshifus should not quite return for the same reason. They have... That's the wrong Urshifu. They have ridiculous damage output and somewhat break the rules of the game. Their damage output is consistent due to the fact that they have access to the ability Unseen Fist and their moves, which always crit, Wicked Blow, and Surging Strikes. These moves are, if you have not played competitive Pokemon prior to Champions, utterly broken. Surging Strikes, I'm going to change the National Dex, that way you guys can actually see the description of these moves. National Dex. Surging Strikes is 25 base power and always crits. That means, and it also hits 3 times. This means that Urshifu Rapid Strike with Mystic Water has been one of the most consistent Pokemon in the game as far as damage output goes, especially when it's paired with a Rain Setter like Pelipper. Tailwind and Urshifu is one of the best ways just to take easy KOs. Always critting means that you ignore Intimidate drops. It means that you ignore defense boost. It means that you ignore Reflect. It is utterly insane just the damage that this thing's capable of. It also got access to Swords Dance, which I think in Champions will actually get it a lot more value than it did in previous generations, because Champions' damage output is a lot lower than that of Generation 9. Close Combat through Protect is really great, and Aqua Jet is ridiculous. Also Protect. One thing I will say about Urshifu Rapid Strike and Urshifu Single Strike, because it's the same thing with Urshifu Single Strike, it's just that it's a Dark type Pokemon with 75 base power Wicked Blow. Always crits, only hits once though. It also gets Sucker Punch, Close Combat. These guys are usually just 3 attacks. 3 attacks, right? And like Focus Sash. However, Unseen Fist has been nerfed. Unseen Fist in Champions is very different. If we look at Golurk, Golurk has the new description of Unseen Fist, which is that, well, it doesn't say it here, but Unseen Fist now does a quarter damage through Protect with contact moves, where prior, it would always hit through Protect at full damage, which is ridiculous. I think that this is an incredible nerf for Urshifu to keep it from being absolutely broken. However, it is still not enough to make it not the best Pokemon in the game, because Surging Strikes just has that ridiculous damage output. In Rain, with a Mystic Water, you know, and a Helping Hand, it's still going to KO things through Protect. That is just my prescription on it. And also, you have to keep in mind, like, did it get nerfed? Yes. Can it do less damage through Protect? Yes. But it still can hit through Protect, and it's still the only water type that can hit through Protect. This isn't going to stop Pokemon like Basculegion from competing with it. Basculegion's still going to be better on certain teams, right? Palafin may still see some usage, but broadly speaking, physical water types just go out the window as soon as Urshifu shows up. Like, you're never going to see another Starmie again. You're never going to see another Palafin again. Other physical water types that exist, you might see Ogerpon. Ogerpon is actually one of the few Pokemon that I think will still continue to thrive in an Urshifu environment, because we've seen it before, and it's just because it counters Urshifu. Water Absorb is incredible. You just are immune to it. So yeah, Urshifu is going to be absolutely busted on rain teams. That may also be a nerf to Swampert, because now instead of Swampert being your rain sweeper on rain teams, it's going to be probably a Metagross or like some other steel type that does good in rain, maybe even Golisopod depending on the format. But yeah, the Urshifus are just far too much power creep for the format for the time being. So I don't think that they should get reintroduced. Other Pokemon that should not get reintroduced just yet. I think the power creep would be way too much if we see Tornadus, Landorus, and Thundurus. I think that if we see these guys, it's over for half the metagame. Tornadus is an incredible Pokemon because of its extremely high speed, its access to Prankster, and its moves Bleak Wind Storm, Rain Dance, Tailwind, and Taunt. These moves basically are what Tornadus is. You do not have a Tornadus, you have these moves. Tornadus is its moves. Tornadus is an enabler for Pokemon like Urshifu Rapid Strike, but also both of its Genie brothers. Being able to have a Tailwind setter other than Whimsicott and Talonflame in the game that has priority Tailwind makes it so other Tailwind setters just start to be a little bit less value, because you have to keep in mind, when you don't have priority Tailwind, you just get less Tailwind. That is just a fact of the game. Back when Tailwind took a turn to start up in Generation 7 and prior, you could use like Tailwind Corviknight more reliably. You could use like Tailwind Pelipper more reliably. It's still going to exist, right? You're still going to see the slow Tailwind setters, but the value is just far less comparable than like Tornadus. So it's far less compared to Tornadus, right? Which means that these Pokemon will see less and less use as like Tornadus takes up some of their market share in like the metagame. It's just too much. Landorus and Thundurus are broken for a different reason. Tornadus is broken for support reasons, but it can also go offensive. Landorus is just way too much damage for the metagame right now. Is it good into Arch? Yes. But Landorus having access to Sheer Force, Life Orb boosted Earth Power, and Sludge Bomb, while being 101 base speed, it also gets Rock Slide, means it deals with Charizard. This would be an nerf to Charizard, truly, but I don't think that the metagame's ready for it. Mostly because if Landorus shows up right now, not only is the damage way too high for where we're at, but also I think that it prevents other Pokemon from seeing like play at all. Like there are certain Pokemon that could be introduced to the metagame that would finally have a niche in this format if not for Landorus existing. Most notably, the Nidos would be actually really great this format if they existed. Nidoking and Nidoqueen, they wouldn't be top tiers, but I think they'd be great Pokemon because they do have that ridiculous damage. They have Sheer Force, they have Life Orb, and they have coverage moves. If you don't know, these guys are known for running special attacks, even though that they're physical attackers by stats, right? That's because Sheer Force Earth Power off of a 85 special attack set is really strong. They also have access to Ice Beam coverage. They also have access to Thunderbolt coverage. And of course, Rock, if you really need to. Basically, a Tailwind Nidoking or a Tailwind Nidoqueen. I think Nidoqueen might end up being more used, mostly just because I think Nidoqueen, the superior bulk on Nidoqueen would end up making it like more reliable if they pick up the same KOs, which for the most part they do. Yeah, these guys would be able to fit onto certain teams. They would be able to, under Tailwind or under Trick Room or any kind of speed control, KO your Garchomps, KO your King Gambits, KO your Golden Goes. Even like to an extent, some Basculegion. I don't think they get Shadow Ball, but they might. You just run Thunderbolt anyways. Thunderbolt's stronger, right? But like it's interesting to think about. But yeah, these guys would be much better in this metagame if they were introduced before Landorus existed. And I think that Thundurus just can't exist because the other two don't exist, right? And Thundurus's like move pool is like so wide and so capable of being like put into different roles in the team that I think that its flexibility leads to it being a little too broken. For reference, Thundurus does get access to Nasty Plot now, as well as its move Wild Bolt Storm, which would be a spread electric type move that deals super effective damage to a lot of Pokemon. Basculegion, Palafin, not that Palafin's common, but like Tailwind Pokemon, the like Corviknight, it does super effective damage into Charizard especially. I think Thundurus, if I had to choose one of the three to add to the game, it probably would be Thundurus, just because we're lacking good electric types. But having a Pokemon that is immune to Garchomp outspeeds it and Charizard, while it is a big nerf for that team, I do think that it ends up just slotting onto the team and making it really frustrating to play against. Does it get Sunny Day? I don't think it does. It does get Sunny Day. Okay, that is a buff for the team, frankly. So yeah, I don't think that like the Genies can show up quite yet either. So right now, we have the Urshifus, which are going to be represented by Urshifu. The Genies, which I'll represent with Tornadus, because I think that's like the one that I really don't want to get added to the game. Next up I would say that I don't want Rillaboom added to the game.
This channel is partnered with Gamersubs. If you want to support my work and get great tasting drinks, you can order Gamersubs through my link in the description down below or with code Moxie boosted at checkout for 10% off. Gamersubs is a caffeinated product that I recommend only to my 18+ viewers, but my link will send you to their caffeine-free product section just in case. Every product purchased through my link supports my channel financially, so I'd really appreciate the support. Now back to the video.
Rillaboom is a Pokemon that would get added just a little too soon. I think that Rillaboom needs to stay away from this game just a bit longer. I'm not ready to have the format slow down as much as it does when Rillaboom exists. And you might think like, oh yeah, when Rillaboom exists in the game, it has to speed up because Grassy Surge, Wood Hammer, and Grassy Surge, Grassy Glide are like ridiculous damage, right? And that's true. However, the thing is that like Rillaboom enables certain Pokemon so well that like the format just becomes impossible to speed up. Like it just, things just do not drop, especially in Terra, which is crazy because Terra was like almost a purely offensive thing. When you give it Incineroar next to it and you give it like any kind of Calm Mind Pokemon, most of the time it was Raging Bolt, right? But like there's several Calm Mind Pokemon that could be really frustrating next to it. I would say that like this would be a nightmare for Floette. Floette would be ridiculous with these two. All right, so for reference, Floette in its base ability, it's Flower Veil. Grass types can't have their stats lowered or status inflicted by other Pokemon. This means that on turn 1, Rillaboom next to Floette is unintimidatable. It means that Intimidate does not matter versus Rillaboom, making its Wood Hammer and Grassy Glide all the more devastating. This also gives recovery to Floette, a Pokemon which effectively doesn't have any like good recovery moves. It just has Draining Kiss and it can't run leftovers. So it can run like the Protect, Calm Mind, Draining Kiss set. Maybe even like Dazzling Gleam. I would say like Dazzling Gleam Moonblast is also just like really good. You can do Dazzling Gleam Moonblast, Calm Mind setup, and it effectively becomes another Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt was ridiculous with its Calm Mind set. It would just have leftovers. It would Calm Mind up. It would click freaking Thunderclap, Protect, and Dragon Pulse. And it was just incredibly difficult to get rid of. Floette kind of ends up in that same position. While it doesn't have as good of physical defense or as good of HP, its special defense gets ridiculous. And when you have like Intimidate Pokemon like Incineroar and Rillaboom running around, it just becomes like ridiculous, right? So yeah, we can't have those added just yet. Rillaboom is just a little too much for the format right now. Two more Pokemon I don't think should be added just yet. If I had to choose, I don't want to just stick with Gen 9 because I think that there are older Pokemon that shouldn't quite yet be added to the game. I'm trying to find a good one. Trying to find one that would genuinely like make me annoyed if we had to play against it. You know what? I'm going to say Tapu Fini. All the Tabus should probably wait, but I think Tapu Fini is especially a Pokemon I don't want to see get added to the game just yet. And that's mostly because it's another Pokemon that slows down the pace of the game just a little bit too much. And I think that Misty Surge is something that we should have to wait for. I think that like we played with Misty Surge for so long that like it almost felt like necessary on certain teams to prevent like sleep and stuff. But Tapu Fini is once again a Pokemon that just is too bulky, and like you might think the format's too fast right now. You'll be surprised just how slow it gets when you add just a few of these pieces to the game. Rillaboom and Tapu Fini, as much as they hate each other, they also love each other because Tapu Fini doesn't care that much about its terrain. Tapu Fini loves being next to Rillaboom because of the extra recovery, the ability to go for these Calm Minds and play, the ability to go for these Calm Minds and play just like, you know, the Raging Bolts and like the Flow Edges with like a lower damage output. But like, it's also just like a ridiculous Pokemon, frankly. After a few Calm Minds, Muddy Water becomes like really annoying. Moonblast is able to deal significant damage. Yeah. If they do add certain Pokemon, I think other Pokemon need to get rotated out. That's like a genuine concern of mine. I think that like we can't allow certain Pokemon to exist in the same format just yet. Once again, I think that like Salamence is an inevitability, so I'm not going to say that Salamence should be added to the game because Mega Salamence is definitely showing up in the next update. I'd be surprised if it didn't. As for Pokemon that we should wait a little bit, I'm not going to add like legendaries to the game because these are like, you know, non-restricted legendaries. Obviously, I don't think that Rayquaza should be added to the game just yet. But if I had to choose a fifth Pokemon, undoubtedly Dondozo. I think that Dondozo is going to be so frustrating to play with the current like tools that we have because we don't have a Mungus, right? if Dondozo gets added and Amoonguss doesn't get added, or Togekiss doesn't get added, or some Pokemon that deals with Dondozo, it's going to be one of the most annoying Pokemon to deal with in the metagame right now. Tatsugiri is 100% getting added in this next update because we need that Mega Form in the game. However, it's getting a Mega Form, right? Mega Tatsugiri probably doesn't have Commander. And if we can have like a format where Tatsugiri exists on its own, it makes it so like Mega Tatsugiri can shine without Dondozo existing. And once again, slowing the format down so much. So if I had to really like explain my issues with like half the list, is that like Urshifu and Tornadus speed up the format way too hard and making it so like they just become like the new metagame. You just tailwind up and start like clicking Searching Strikes, especially in a format where we don't have like a ton of great defensive water types. They're mostly offensive water types. Urshifu just becomes king, right? Rillaboom is sort of a symptom of both of these, where Rillaboom can simultaneously slow the game down with like Tapu Fini and Dondozo, but like it can also really speed the game up with Tornadus and Urshifu. That I just don't want them added to the game yet. I think that other grass types need a little bit of time to shine, and adding Rillaboom to the format just makes it so like grass types that just don't see a lot of play will just like never see play again. Like Parasect hasn't been added to the game, but like if we get a Moongus and like Rillaboom in the game, Parasect's never seeing play. And it just kind of like throws a lot of really interesting stuff out the window. Like instead of Rillaboom, let me see Bramblegast, you know? Tapu Fini and Dondozo just slow the game down way too much. If you're unaware, pun, Dondozo has the ability Unaware. It ignores damage, or it ignores stat changes when taking or receiving, when taking or dealing out damage on the opponent's side of things. So when you pair that with Commander Tatsugiri, which gives Dondozo a +2 boost to all of its stats, Dondozo just gets to sit in and click Wave Crash and freaking Earthquake and Protect and Substitute and whatever, and it's just like a frustrating Pokemon. Order Up also is ridiculous. It boosts the stats of Dondozo depending on which Tatsugiri is in its mouth. Yeah, these Pokemon, I don't think that we should add them to the game. I think that it's just, it's too soon. Not a fan of them getting added just yet. So yeah. Anyways, those are my thoughts. I'm going to have to record this one from the YouTube stream and then upload it as a video because I ran out of disk space and I have to clear out my thing. So that sucks. But yeah. Anyways, that's going to be it for today, guys. If you're watching...